We're going to approach this landscape a little differently than we normally do. Everywhere I'm going to layer the colors in here, starting with warms, starting with the lemon yellow, and then the transparent pyrrole orange. So we're going to layer all the warms in first. And the warms, obviously, other than pure yellow, pure orange, are any of these trees that have a yellow bias. So you can see all the pine trees tend to have this more yellow look about them. We've got some yellow undertones in these greens. And of course in the oranges, they're all yellow undertones. So we're going to start with that first. To approach this foliage, you can do foliage in a lot of different ways. The easiest way is with a fan brush. This is a special fan brush, as you can see, is variegated in length here. That makes nice foliage. A regular round brush you can use. This is a special brush. This is a Skoda, and it's got a fat belly but a very fine point, and you can use that, or you can use a dagger. This is a dagger brush, which is just, and you can use the very tip to make interesting foliage there. So we'll use some of these different brushes and just a regular brush as well. The thing that probably works the easiest for most people is a sea sponge. So we'll do some of that. So we're going to remember that we want the blue showing through here in the sky. And we remember this is our outline for our trees. So what I'm going to do currently, since I have that already marked off, is I'm going to get rid of that line because now we've already put our sky in, so we don't need that anymore. And I'll just work into that and soften that line. You want to get the masking off as soon as possible when you're painting, just so that it's easier to blend it in without harsh lines. So I think we will, and to soften that line, we'll use a small flat brush like this, or even that, probably not that tiny one, just a little scrubber brush. Just be sure it's clean. And the way we do that is just to go in with a damp brush and just soften this a little bit so we don't have that harsh line there that we're having to hide. That was just a reminder that that's where the tree line is. So let's just wet that on either side there. And that tree line goes all the way up here. So now that we've protected all of this, we can paint this freely. And that was the goal of using that masking fluid, even to mask in the darker trees. So first, let's try the fan brush. And pay attention to where we see the yellows. So there'll be some. And remember that when you go over this blue, you're going to end up with a slight green. So if you just randomly do your yellows like this with your fan brush, try not to make it too even. And this tree, these are cottonwood trees. They're beautiful in the fall. Let's put some down here. And then we know our pine trees up here are going to be more on the yellow-green side. So we can put those in, put a little yellow in there. You could use New Gamboge if you rather for this. Or both, actually. So we're just kind of getting the idea. And the one thing about painting foliage is you have to be very careful that you don't make a solid mass, that you leave some air holes in here or sky holes just to keep that soft. Okay, that's the fan brush. If I were using a brush like this, which is a liner brush, let's try the new Gamboge. Let's put a little of that. You can see it's a much warmer yellow. So if I just put it in a few places without, don't overthink it. That's the important thing here. We're just building layers, so we don't want to overdo this. And notice how the branches, the foliage is on the branches. It's different for every kind of tree. But I think building this up gradually will really help you to appreciate landscapes. I'm going to put it all down in here. Trying not to be too even. You can even dry brush it a little bit if you want. This is all going to be covered. This is all trees over in here. Even behind here there'll be some. Don't want to leave any large areas undone. Okay, so that's that brush. If I wanted to just use a regular, this is a number 8 long round by Princeton. Let's go into the oranges this time. Same thing, right on point. If you just kind of dab it, kind of following your branches. Some artists put in the foliage and then the branches. I like putting in the branches first because that gives me a guideline of kind of where I want to go. This is the transparent pyrrole orange. I didn't put the yellow under the green down here because this is a very blue green. So we're going to keep that on the cool side. This is all our warms. You can see with just if you just kind of mash the brush down there without overthinking it, you can kind of get the tree illusion here. Remembering to put the orange mostly, and you can see it's quite a red orange. So I think we're going to take some of our burnt sienna and that transparent orange, make a little darker orange in there for some of this. You can see how nice that is. Kind of closer in to the center of the trees maybe. The lighter colors will usually be on the out edge where the light's hitting. So we'll keep the darks kind of darker in here. Okay, so there's our orange. Let's break this edge up a little bit over here just by dabbing it. Put some of these in the background. Before I forget that water is back there, I'm going to put a little more of the cerulean blue back in here just to remind me that water is back there. Even a little through there and even into here, because that's way too much blue. So we'll just wash that out. Actually, we might need that that strong. So I think we'll leave that there like that. Okay. All right. Okay. That gives us the illusion of water back there. right, so we've got our worms in. So let me show you the sponge. So if you just take a sponge in a random, we'll just pick up all the different colors. This is probably my very favorite way of doing foliage because it's such a random. Gives you such a nice random way of doing things. Just don't overdo it, but the sponge works really well. All right, so now we're gonna go, oh, I have one more brush to show you. This is, and you don't need this brush, okay? This is totally a luxury here. This is a Rosemary & Co. foliage brush. It's designed especially for foliage. It's really, I bought it for oil paints, but it actually works quite well for watercolor as well. So if you just touch the problem with Rosemary & Company brushes is you have to order them from England, and it's the postage is about $14 or $15. So I don't order them often. That's just with that green that we had mixed up. That was the new gamboge and the so pine trees kind of have this kind of way of growing out and up. You could take an old brush and just cut it up and get kind of a similar effect here with this. This actually works better for oil, but if you just use the tip, it works the best. I'm not going to overdo that. Anyway, thought I'd show you that one. My very favorite way to do pine trees is with the fan brush. So that's what I'm going to use. If you don't have a fan brush, just use whatever brush you have that will make a random mark. Okay, let's make up our new gamboge. We're going to go for our yellow-green first. So we're doing the new gamboge and the ultramarine blue. Way too much ultramarine blue. If you get too much on the palette like that, just wipe it off instead of trying to get your mixture right. It just wastes too much paint to do it the other way. Okay, there's a nice random green. Now if you dry off some of your brush, some of this off, and you just get it on the tips, need a little more than that. Remember our, see how we get that nice randomness? Like that. And of course the yellow-green is where they're going to be hitting the, sunlight's going to be hitting more of the pine trees. And the pine trees come all, and do yourself a favor, don't get so into doing this that you don't stop and see what you've got here. Because trust me, you can just fill in the whole entire area with this. And we've actually got some over here, behind here. So we're just going to put some random foliage in over here. Not like that. And then there will be greens mixed in all in here, of course. Let's get some random shape up in here. This tree line back there. Just be sure and stop and assess what you have so far. See, we're already losing our blue here. So before we lose any more, let I'm going to take my cerulean blue and I'm going to punch in some blue sky just here and there. Just to give that illusion of, they're called sky holes. Especially over here. This is coming much too much to a point, this tree. We're gonna have to work on that, but that's fine. That's okay. Let's get a little more blue here. This is very watered down, soft colors, okay? And while we're doing that, let's go in and put our blue back in the water down here, just to remind us. Now where we've painted in the reflections and the movement of the water is kind of picking up there. That's nice. Here we go. All right. And we're going to bleed that in there a little bit. And our water is we're going to make our water a slightly bluer, greeny, blue-green color. Right. And while that's still wet, I'm going to go in. Now we've shifted to our blues. So we're moving into our cooler colors. So let's make up our blue or green. And since we've got some lightness here, let's start with the cerulean. And just mix it into what we've already have on here. And let's see here if we can get some of that green in here. Okay, because we are painting on a two-dimensional surface and we are trying to get the sense of perspective here, to push this tree way in the background, I'm going to make it much more blue with the cerulean. And anything that's bluer or more purple fades into the background better. Keeping our sky holes, I'm really worried about losing those because that's the first thing I always lose is the sky holes. So just keeping that blue in here, the cerulean, a little bit. That also gives you that perspective nicely. And remember our body of water back here and here. Let's do the blue again here. Just let's get some darker areas of the blue-green in here. Around the edge, the bottom. We want to move our eye up into this area here. So a little more cerulean in here. Building this darker. Remember, we've masked all this out, so that's going to be very white. I'm debating whether I want my sky to be a little bluer. Maybe just right in here. Darken it up a little bit. That might look better. All right, so there's our first layer of our warms and our cools. So we're going to let this dry thoroughly. Then we're going to come back in and start building our colors. So let's let this dry, or dry it with the hair dryer, and we'll move on.